The late afternoon sun pressed against Elena's back as she stood before the rusted door. Miami's humid air felt heavier than she remembered, thick with forgotten summers. She hadn't planned to walk this far, yet her feet seemed guided by something unspoken. The chipped paint and crooked handle stirred an ache she thought long buried. She reached out, breath trembling, unsure if she wanted the door to open. When the door finally groaned inward, the sound sliced straight through her chest. Dust rose like a slow exhale, revealing shadows shaped by old mirrors. The scent of rosin, wood, and time clung stubbornly to the air. She felt the pull of a life she'd abandoned, a rhythm she feared remembering. Elena stepped inside as if crossing a line she could never uncross. The floorboards creaked beneath her, each one echoing a forgotten rehearsal. She imagined her younger self spinning across the room with fearless certainty. But the vision faded quickly, replaced by the sharp memory of her fall. The injury had ended more than her career. It had closed something deep within. Now the room watched her, waiting for a truth she wasn't ready to face. Elena brushed her fingers along the mirror's cracked edge, feeling its cool resistance. The reflection was unfamiliar, softened by years of retreat and silence. She wasn't sure whether she mourned the past or feared its return. The dust on the glass made her silhouette seem like a ghost of herself. Something tightened in her throat, a longing mixed with dread. A loose floorboard snapped under her foot, startling her senses awake. The sound broke the trance, grounding her in the strangeness of being back. She wanted to leave, close the door, forget this moment entirely. But a small, persistent pulse inside her refused to quiet down. It whispered that she had come here for a reason she didn't yet understand. She walked toward the center of the room, where the light fell in a pale circle. Standing there felt like stepping into a memory, still beating with life. Her heart pounded, not with excitement, but with a quiet desperation. She didn't know if she missed dancing or just missed who she once was. Either way, the emptiness of the room echoed with unfinished stories. Before leaving, she turned back for one final look. The room seemed to breathe with her, expanding and contracting in silence. She felt something shift inside, small but unmistakable. It wasn't hope yet, but it was no longer denial. Elena closed the door gently, knowing it would open again soon. The next morning, Elena found herself walking back without planning it. Her thoughts tangled like loose ribbons, pulling her toward what unsettled her. When she pushed the door open, the familiar groan greeted her again. It sounded almost like the room was waking up with her. She stepped inside, sensing the weight of everything she once loved. Her footsteps echoed in the space, slower this time, more intentional. The silence wasn't empty. It was filled with memories she couldn't ignore. She imagined music rising from the corners, filling the hollow air. The ghost of a long-ago melody brushed against her skin. Elena let the memory wash over her, uninvited but strangely welcome. She walked to the bar and rested her hands atop the worn wood. The grain under her palms felt like an old friend she had forgotten. Closing her eyes, she pictured rehearsals that had once felt endless: sweat, breath, determination, the rhythm of her former life. But the memory of pain struck quickly, reminding her why she left. Her body reacted before her mind did, recoiling at the thought of movement. The injury had carved a scar deeper than the physical wound. Years of silence had taught her to avoid anything that stirred the ache. Yet here she was, willingly walking back into the center of it. The contradiction tightened her chest, both comforting and cruel. She turned toward the mirrors again, noticing new cracks she hadn't seen yesterday. They fractured her reflection into shifting pieces she barely recognized. A part of her wanted to turn away, to protect the fragile illusion. But another part leaned in, searching for something familiar. What she found instead was a woman suspended between past and present. A soft breeze filtered through the broken window, carrying city noises inside. Buses rumbled, distant laughter drifted, life moved without hesitation. Elena felt impossibly still, as if time inside the studio moved differently. The world outside was loud and sure. In here, everything whispered. She felt small, but she also felt seen. As she prepared to leave, she hesitated at the doorway. She realized she didn't want the echoes to fade just yet. The room had awakened something tender, something unfinished. She wasn't ready to name it, but she wasn't ready to lose it either. Elena stepped out slowly, carrying the echo with her like a breath held in backnet. Back at her sister's house, Elena stood before a small hallway mirror. The stillness of the home contrasted sharply with the studio's pulse. She lifted her arm tentatively, testing a movement she once mastered. The motion felt foreign, as if borrowed from someone else's memory. A dull ache traveled through her shoulder, unexpected and unsettling. She attempted a simple ply, something her muscles once knew instinctively. Her knees trembled, not with effort, but with unfamiliar hesitation. The floor beneath her didn't feel like a partner anymore, only resistance. Every inch of her body reminded her of the years she had turned away. The loss felt heavier now that she had glimpsed what she'd abandoned. She tried again, slower this time, searching for gentleness, but the movement collapsed midway as frustration surged. It wasn't the pain that hurt most, it was the memory of ease. She missed the trust she once had in her own body. Now she felt like a visitor in a place she used to call home. Breathing deeply, she leaned against the wall for balance. Her pulse raced, not from exertion but from emotion. She realized how long she had avoided even trying. Attempting these small motions felt like reopening a sealed door. And behind that door lay everything she wasn't ready to feel. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her trembling hands. The quiet of the room pressed around her, leaving no escape. She wanted to blame age, time, circumstance, anything easy. But the truth was harder. She had stopped believing in herself. And belief, once lost, was the heaviest thing to lift. Elena closed her eyes, letting the disappointment settle. But beneath it, something flickered, faint, persistent. A desire not just to move again, but to feel alive again. It surprised her, rising from a place she thought dormant. A place that still remembered music even in silence. When she stood up, her legs felt unsteady but determined. She wasn't ready to return to dance, not yet. But she knew she couldn't ignore the stirrings inside her. Something had shifted, small but undeniable, and it whispered that the story wasn't over. Elena returned to the studio with the intention of only looking, but she found Mr. Alvarez, the former owner, waiting at the entrance. His frail frame leaned on a cane, yet his eyes held familiar warmth. He greeted her as if no years had passed, as if she'd never left. The sight of him softened something she'd kept guarded. He explained he'd been meaning to clean out the place, but when he saw the lights flick on the night before, he hoped it was her. He said the studio had been waiting for her, in its own quiet way. The words struck her with unexpected force, like truth disguised as kindness. Elena looked away, unsure how to hold the weight of his hope. Mr. Alvarez reached into his pocket and pulled out a keyring. The metal keys clinked softly, worn from decades of use. He placed them gently into her hand, without ceremony. "You should have it," he said, as if stating something obvious. Her breath caught, stunned by the simplicity of his gesture. She protested. She didn't deserve it. She wasn't ready. She didn't belong here. But he shook his head, silencing her with a look filled with certainty. He reminded her of the student she once was, fierce, committed, alive. He said the studio still recognized her, even if she didn't recognize herself. His faith unsettled her, tender and overwhelming. Elena stared at the keys resting in her palm. They felt heavier than they looked, as if carrying old echoes. Her mind raced with memories of late nights, bruises, and triumphs. The keys unlocked more than a door. They unlocked something inside her, something she had locked away for far too long. Mr. Alvarez squeezed her shoulder before leaving. His touch lingered like a blessing she didn't know she needed. She watched him walk away, slow but steady, fading into the Miami heat. The keys pressed into her hand with quiet insistence. Suddenly, she felt the studio's silence waiting for her decision. She walked inside and let the light fall across the room. For the first time, she felt not like an intruder, but a caretaker. The shift was subtle, soft as breath, but deeply real. Something within her had moved, surprising her with its courage. Elena closed her fingers around the keys, not ready, but willing. With the studio now hers, Elena returned the next day with cleaning supplies. The task felt symbolic, like dusting off parts of herself long ignored. Sunlight filtered through the broken window, illuminating motes of dust. The room seemed to watch her, expectant and patient. She exhaled slowly, trying to steady her nerves. She knelt to wipe the floor, her movements slow and deliberate. But the act triggered memories so vivid they almost hurt. She remembered practicing until her muscles burned with purpose. Now every gesture felt uncertain, as if she were trespassing. A wave of insecurity rose, sharp and unexpected. As she scrubbed a corner of the floor, her hand brushed a faded mark. She froze, recognizing it instantly, the spot she had collapsed on 2 years ago. The moment of her fall replayed brutally in her mind. The shock, the pain, the silence that followed. It all returned with startling clarity. Her breath faltered as she sat back on her heels. The memory wrapped around her like a cold shadow. She had tried so hard to forget that day, to erase its sting. But here it was, living in the very boards beneath her. She felt the old fear rise, thick and suffocating. She forced herself to keep cleaning, but her hands trembled. Each stroke felt like a battle against the ghosts of her past. She wanted to be stronger than this moment, but she wasn't. The doubt spilled into her chest, heavy and relentless. She wondered if coming back had been a mistake. When she finally stood, her legs felt weak. The studio seemed larger than before, almost intimidating. Her progress felt small, fragile, almost invisible. She hated how easily fear found its way back in. The room, once a sanctuary, now felt like a test she was failing. Elena stepped outside, gulping the humid air as if resurfacing. She felt shaken, uncertain, painfully vulnerable. But beneath the fear was something else, something unresolved. The studio had reopened a wound, yes, but also a possibility. And she knew, reluctantly, that she would return tomorrow. The next morning, Elena arrived with a broom, paint samples, and a stubborn resolve. The studio looked just as worn as before, but she felt different now. She set her things down and listened to the quiet, steadying her breath. Somewhere in the silence, she sensed permission rather than judgment. It gave her the smallest spark of courage. She started sweeping, the bristles scraping rhythmically across the floor. The movement brought an unexpected sense of familiarity, almost comfort. Dust gathered in soft piles, revealing the wood beneath. She imagined it awakening under her touch, grateful not to be forgotten. Each stroke felt like brushing life back into a sleeping body. When she washed the mirrors, her reflection came into view gradually. Not all at once, but in soft fragments, like a memory returning. She didn't recoil this time. She steadied herself thoughtfully. Lines she once resented now looked like stories rather than flaws. For a moment, she felt quietly proud of surviving. The more she cleaned, the more the room transformed. And with it, something inside her shifted as well. This place had held her pain, yes, but it had also held her strength. She wiped a streak from the mirror and met her own gaze with honesty. Maybe, she whispered, I'm not as broken as I thought. She opened the windows to let the Miami breeze flow in. Warm, salty air filled the room, stirring loose papers to life. It felt like the city itself was breathing with her. The studio no longer felt like a grave of failure. It felt like a place waiting for someone brave enough to stay. By afternoon, sweat trickled down her back as she worked. She paused only when a faint soreness tugged at her hip. The ache was familiar, but it didn't scare her this time. It reminded her she was still here, still capable of effort, still willing to try. When she stepped outside, she felt both exhausted and renewed. Her clothes were dirty, her hands raw, but her heart lighter. She had made progress, not dramatic, but undeniably hers. The studio had met her halfway, responding to her presence. Elena walked home sensing, for the first time, a fragile momentum. The next day, she brought an old speaker she hadn't used in years. It was covered in dust, much like the parts of her she was rediscovering. She plugged it in with hesitant fingers, unsure of what would surface. When the first track began to play, her breath caught. It was a song she used to rehearse too endlessly. The melody filled the studio, weaving through corners long silent. It wrapped around her like a memory made of breath and heartbeat. Her chest tightened, recognizing every rise and fall of the music. It was beautiful, but it hurt, a reminder of who she once was, and who she feared she could never be again. She sat on the floor, letting the music pour over her. Images flickered behind her eyes, sweat, applause, the thrill of motion. But threaded through them was the moment of her injury. The sharp crack, the stunned silence, the years of withdrawal. The memory pressed hard, demanding to be felt. Tears came unexpectedly, soft and steady. Not the dramatic kind, but the quiet release of long-held grief. Each note seemed to touch a bruise inside her, yet she didn't stop the music or turn away. She let the ache run its course, unshielded for once. When the playlist shifted to a slower song, something eased. The music no longer felt like accusation. It felt like an invitation, a suggestion to move, even if only a little. Elena rose, placing a tentative hand on the bar. Her fingers trembled, but her resolve did not. She tried a gentle stretch, feeling the tension unwind slowly. Her body responded unevenly, like an instrument slightly out of tune. But there was rhythm in her breath, rhythm in the room, rhythm returning. Even the pain felt less like a wall and more like a threshold. She stayed with it, letting the music guide her. When the song ended, she stood very still. Her cheeks were damp, her muscles trembling, her heart wide open. Something had shifted painfully, undeniably within her. The music had touched a wound but also revealed its depth. Elena knew she would come back tomorrow, needing to know what came next. Elena arrived earlier than usual, drawn by unfamiliar anticipation. As she unlocked the door, she sensed eyes watching her. Turning, she saw a teenage girl pressed against the window, wide-eyed, curious, unembarrassed by her staring. Her presence startled Elena in a way she couldn't explain. The girl stepped back as Elena approached, but not far. Her hair was curly, her backpack covered in pins and doodles. She introduced herself as Maya, a neighbor who passed by often. She said she'd noticed lights, music, and someone moving inside. Her voice held the eager tremble of someone who loved dance. Elena felt both flattered and uneasy under the girl's attention. Maya asked if she could look inside just for a moment. Something in her tone, hopeful, hungry, softened Elena's hesitation. She opened the door wider and let the girl enter. Maya stepped in as though crossing into a sacred place. Maya examined everything with reverence. The mirrors, the bar, the worn floor. She said she'd always wanted to dance but had never taken a class. When she asked if Elena was a professional, Elena stumbled over her answer. The word was felt heavy on her tongue, tasting of unfinished stories. Maya didn't seem to notice the hesitation, only the possibility. The girl mimicked a small movement she'd seen online, awkward but earnest. Elena watched her with a mix of amusement and ache. There was raw potential in the girl's posture, unpolished but real. It stirred something protective, almost maternal, inside her, something she hadn't expected to feel again. When Maya asked if she could come by again, Elena hesitated. The idea scared her. Teaching meant responsibility, exposure, risk. But the spark in Maya's eyes reminded her of a younger self, someone who believed in beginnings before she knew of endings. So Elena nodded softly, almost involuntarily. After Maya left, the studio felt different. Not larger, but fuller, as if a new possibility had walked in with her. Elena touched the bar, feeling the echo of the girl's excitement. It warmed her, steadying her in a surprising way. For the first time, she didn't fear tomorrow. Maya arrived the next afternoon with a shy grin and boundless curiosity. Elena pretended to busy herself, unsure how to begin. Teaching felt like stepping onto thin ice, familiar yet unpredictable. She asked Maya to start with a simple position to gauge her ability. The girl complied eagerly, though her feet wobbled adorably. Maya attempted apply, bending her knees with uncertain grace. Her posture was wrong, her timing off, but her determination fierce. Elena found herself giving gentle corrections almost without thinking. Her voice softened, her instincts waking from long sleep. Something within her aligned quietly and beautifully. As they continued, Maya laughed at her own mistakes. The sound was bright and disarming, filling the room with lightness. Elena felt her tension ease, step by step, breath by breath. She corrected Maya's arms, demonstrating the motion with care. Her body remembered the movement better than she expected, but a sharp twinge shot through her hip, mid-demonstration. She froze, gripping the bar to steady herself. Maya noticed and asked if she was okay, concern widening her eyes. Elena forced a smile, insisting she was fine. Inside, she battled the old fear creeping back. They slowed the pace, focusing on basics and breath. Elena guided Maya's movements with patient precision. Each correction felt like rediscovering a forgotten part of herself. The small progress Maya made sparked a fragile pride. Pride not in the girl, but in her own courage to teach again. When they finished, Maya thanked her with heartfelt sincerity. The gratitude felt warm, unfamiliar, and deeply needed. Elena realized she had given something today, and received even more. She sensed a quiet shift in her chest, a softening, a reminder that healing sometimes begins with someone else's hope. After Maya left, Elena lingered in the quiet studio. Her muscles ached, her hip throbbed, but her heart felt steady. She replayed the girl's laughter in her mind, surprised by her own smile. Teaching hadn't broken her, it had awakened her, and she knew she wanted to continue. Maya returned the next day more confident, though still adorably clumsy. This time she brought a small notebook filled with dancing sketches. She asked questions, dozens of them, hungry to understand everything. Her enthusiasm washed over Elena like a tide she couldn't resist, but beneath the warmth, anxiety fluttered in Elena's stomach. Midway through practice, Maya paused thoughtfully. She looked at Elena with an earnest seriousness rarely seen in teens. "Would you teach me properly?" she asked, voice trembling. "Like, for real, a real student." The question struck Elena like a sudden spotlight. Elena stepped back, heart jolting with fear. Teaching properly meant commitment, structure, vulnerability. It meant confronting her own story. Hadn't she told Maya she wasn't ready, the words tasting bitter? Maya's smile faltered, but hope still flickered in her eyes. Maya insisted gently, saying she felt something special here, something she couldn't explain but didn't want to lose. Elena felt the truth of that, felt the same unnamed pull, but fear tightened around her like an old, familiar rope. Fear of failing again, of being seen too clearly. She told Maya she needed time, trying to sound firm. Maya nodded, though disappointment tugged at her expression. She promised to return anyway, even if just to watch. Her loyalty caught Elena off guard, stirring a fragile warmth, a warmth she didn't quite know what to do with. After Maya left, silence settled heavily in the room. Elena paced slowly, feeling the conflict twist inside her. Teaching could reopen doors she had kept locked for years, but maybe those doors needed opening, not for Maya, but for herself. The thought lingered, trembling with possibility. She sat on the floor, leaning against the mirrored wall. The studio felt vast, full of questions she couldn't yet answer. Maya's invitation echoed through her mind, persistent and tender. Something had shifted again, pulling her toward a new edge. Elena closed her eyes, knowing the next step would change everything. Elena entered the studio before sunrise, drawn by a quiet urgency. The room felt different in the early light, softer, almost forgiving. She placed her hand on the bar, letting the cool wood steady her. A deep breath filled her chest with something like possibility. She decided to move, not for performance, but for truth. She began with slow stretches, letting her muscles wake gently. Each movement tugged at memories stored deep within her body. Her limbs felt stiff at first, but not foreign, simply dormant. She followed the rhythm of her breath, patient and deliberate. The tension faded gradually, like ice melting under warmth. When she attempted a simple sequence, the old fear flickered. Her hip twinged, and for a moment she hesitated, breath caught. But instead of retreating, she softened into the movement. She listened to her body with compassion rather than pressure. And to her surprise, the pain eased instead of growing. She tried again, slower, letting movement guide her rather than control her. Her body responded with unexpected clarity, remembering old pathways. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, grounded, human, alive. She felt a fragile joy rising from somewhere deep inside, a joy she hadn't dared to feel in years. In the mirror, she saw a woman not defined by loss but by persistence, someone who had broken, yes, but who had also endured. She held her own gaze, recognizing strength she had long denied. The reflection didn't intimidate her this time. It steadied her, whispering, "You're still here." As she moved through the room, a subtle rhythm formed around her. The floor creaked softly. The air hummed with quiet energy. She felt connected to the space in a way she hadn't before. Not as a dancer returning to reclaim the past, but as a woman discovering a new beginning. When she finally stopped, her breath was shaky but triumphant. She leaned against the bar, overwhelmed by the moment's honesty. The studio watched her with gentle acceptance, as if welcoming her back. She knew she wasn't healed yet, but she was no longer afraid. And that shift, small and profound, carried her into the day. Maya arrived that afternoon, buzzing with her usual excited energy. She chattered about school, friends, and a performance she'd seen online. Elena listened, feeling an unexpected warmth at the girl's presence. When Maya asked if they could practice, Elena hesitated only briefly. Then she nodded, surprising them both. They began with simple warm-ups, Elena guiding with calm clarity. Her voice carried a steadiness she hadn't felt in years. Maya followed each instruction with fearless enthusiasm. The girl's joy was contagious, loosening Elena's lingering doubts. The studio felt brighter with their shared movement. As they progressed, Elena demonstrated a small sequence. The motion flowed more easily than she expected. Maya watched with wide eyes, admiration softening her features. Elena felt a blush of humility at being seen that way again. but she allowed herself to accept the moment. When Maya attempted the sequence, she stumbled adorably. Elena rushed forward to support her, both laughing. The shared laughter echoed warmly through the room. It broke something open inside Elena, a tenderness long buried. Teaching began to feel less like a risk and more like a calling. They paused for water, breathless and flushed. Maya thanked her again, but this time with deeper sincerity. She said Elena made her feel capable, brave, seen. The words struck Elena like a gentle revelation. She hadn't realized she could still offer that to someone. As they resumed, Elena noticed something powerful. Teaching didn't diminish her, it expanded her. Each correction, each demonstration, opened space within her, a space she had once filled only with regret and silence. Now, it held purpose. When the lesson ended, Maya hugged her impulsively. Elena stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into the embrace. It felt like acceptance from the girl, from the studio, from herself. She watched Maya leave with a heart fuller than she expected. Today, she realized, had changed something permanently. The next morning, Elena woke with a familiar ache in her hip. It pulsed sharply as she stood, dragging old fears with it. She almost canceled her visit to the studio, tempted to retreat, but something steadier inside urged her forward. She refused to let fear reclaim the ground she'd gained. When she reached the studio, she moved cautiously. She tested small motions, gauging the limits of her pain. The ache responded with stubborn persistence, demanding attention. But instead of panicking, she breathed through it, listening to her body without judgment. She attempted a gentle stretch, and the pain surged. It brought tears instantly, sharp and uninvited. For a moment, she clung to the bar, breath uneven. The memory of her injury threatened to swallow her whole. But this time, she didn't run. She let the tears fall, slow, deliberate, necessary. Grief she had held for years spilled freely at last, not just for the fall, but for everything she'd abandoned afterward. The lost opportunities, the silence, the self-doubt, all of it rose and broke like a wave. As she cried, the pain softened, no longer a tyrant. It became a messenger instead, pointing to what needed release. She realized she had never truly mourned her loss. She had only buried it beneath layers of avoidance. Now, the burial ground had finally cracked open. When the tears subsided, she felt emptied yet strangely lighter. She stretched again, slower, gentler, more present. The pain didn't vanish, but it didn't frighten her anymore. It felt like part of her story rather than its ending, a scar that spoke of survival. She sank to the floor, resting her back against the mirror. Her breath steadied, her heart softened, her fear quieted. For the first time, she felt truly honest with herself. Pain had broken something open, but inside was freedom. Elena rose again, carrying that freedom like a vow. That evening, the studio glowed with warm, golden light. Elena stood in the center, feeling an unfamiliar calm settle in. She decided to create a small piece, not complex, but meaningful. A dance about loss, resilience, and beginnings. A dance that belonged only to her. She moved slowly at first, exploring shapes and breath. Each motion rose from a place raw and honest within her. Her body spoke truths she hadn't put into words. There was no audience, no pressure, no judgment. Just movement and meaning intertwining. As the piece formed, she felt emotion swell through her. Not grief this time, but gratitude, unexpected and warm. She felt grateful for the years, even the broken ones. They had led her here, to this quiet reclamation, a moment she wouldn't trade for any applause. Her movements grew bolder, confidence blooming. She stepped, reached, turned with newfound grace, not the grace of youth, but of understanding. Her body wasn't perfect, but it was true. True in every line, every breath, every tremor. When she reached the final pose, a hush settled around her. She stood still, heart open, grounded and unguarded. For the first time in years, she felt whole, not because she had reclaimed the past, but because she had redefined the present. Elena lowered her arms, breath trembling. She sensed the studio holding her gently, approvingly. The air felt charged, as if she had stitched the room together again. Her piece wasn't polished, but it was hers entirely. A dance pulled from the deepest part of her. When she finally stopped, tears blurred her vision. But these tears were soft, warm, born of release rather than pain. She felt a quiet certainty settle in her bones. This dance had been missing for years, and now it lived. Elena whispered. I'm ready. A week later, Elena opened the studio doors to the public. She expected maybe one or two curious neighbors, but women of all ages gathered at the entrance, hopeful and nervous. Their eyes reflected stories of their own beginnings and losses. Elena felt a tremble of awe move through her. She welcomed them inside with a smile that came naturally. The restored studio glowed softly, almost proudly. Maya stood at her side, grinning with uncontainable excitement. Elena felt a surge of belonging she hadn't felt in decades, a sense that this moment was bigger than just her. The class began with hesitant laughter and awkward steps. Some women moved stiffly, others moved with hidden grace. Elena guided them gently, encouraging patience and breath. She watched their faces soften, their shoulders loosen. The room came alive with courage. As they continued, Elena sensed something remarkable happen. The studio breathed with them. Inhale, exhale, hope, release. Where once there had been silence and dust, there was now life. Movement threaded through the space like a gentle tide. It felt like witnessing a rebirth. Maya danced beside her, proud and bright. Elena corrected her posture, smiling through the warmth in her chest. She realized she had created something she never expected. A place where others could begin again, just as she had. A place where brokenness was not an ending. When the class ended, applause filled the room. Not thunderous, but heartfelt, honest, deeply human. Elena stood in the center, overwhelmed by gratitude. She felt herself expand with each breath, lighter and braver. This, she knew, was the dance she was meant to continue. As everyone left, the studio settled into a peaceful quiet. Elena turned off the lights, letting the darkness rest gently. She felt no fear, no hesitation, only purpose. The studio breathed with her, alive once more. And Elena stepped into her future, finally whole.